Hello, welcome to the Manasplained podcast. I'm Connor. Today I'll be talking about the deck I built for Chromium. Chromium is an Elder Dragon that costs 8 mana and is a 7/7. He also has Flying and Rampage 2, which is an old word, which I'll actually get right this time, unlike the banding episode. That function's kind of weird that they don't use anymore. He also has an upkeep cost, so if you don't pay a black, a blue, and a white during your upkeep, you'll have to sacrifice him. All the Elder Dragons from Legends have this, and it was like a way to balance them back then because they didn't want them being too strong, but it turned out that they weren't too strong. I mean, they might have been back during that age of cards, but by modern standards, they're actually all pretty weak now, except for maybe Nicol Bolas. Anyways, the way Rampage works is that for every creature blocking it beyond the first, it'll get +2/+2 because it has Rampage 2. Just a quick example, say Chromium gets blocked by 6 1/1s. Since there's 5 1/1s beyond the first one, Chromium will get +10/+10, +2/+2 for each one. So this has an interesting use case where you're trying to get them to be blocked by multiple creatures. And the way you can do that is with cards like Trample or Must Be Blocked if Able, which is kind of like what I'm going for with this deck. There's one equipment called Nemesis Mask that just makes it so that the equipped creature must be blocked by like all creatures if able. So what you do is you attack with them, you get your opponent to block it with all of its creatures, and then it gets huge, and then if they're 1/1s, it'll make him bigger than the amount of blockers, which helps you will kill them all. And then if you have Trample, you can do Trample damage through, which is awesome. And then if you have like Death Touch plus Trample, even if they're 1/4s, you only need to assign the 1 damage, and then the rest can go through. So yeah, I have this deck kind of as like a combat board wipe style deck, and I really hope you enjoy because I had a lot of fun building it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. It helps me grow the channel, and I'd really appreciate it and love to have you along for my journey in building all these decks. So let's get into it. So for the deck breakdown, I have 8 Haste, 8 Trample, 3 Subtheme, 3 Synergy, 6 Protection, 7 Equip Nonsense, and 3 Recursion, which seems like it's all over the place, and it kind of is. And I did break the deck down into a lot more groups than just like Theme, Subtheme, Synergy, because I was trying to do a lot with the deck. And so in order to do that, I needed to have multiple categories that all did its own niche thing. And I really think it's going to work. It works really well. And then in addition to that, I have 8 draw, 10 ramp, 10 removal, 3 wipes, 6 tutors, and 38 lands. So I normally don't run tutors in any of my decks because I hate when the decks feel samey because you're just tutoring for like the best card in your deck or the same card every time. But this deck is designed around one specific card, which is also why I have the recursion from the other category, so you can bring it back in case it goes away, which I will talk about what that card is in the next section. And I mentioned it was Nemesis Mask from earlier. But all these categories together means I have 13 crossover cards. That's such a better number than some of my previous decks. Having 13 crossover cards, I like having at least 10, like I've said before, because having multiple cards in your deck that fulfill multiple roles makes it so that each draw has more value. So if say like all 100 cards in your deck, besides like the basic lands or whatever, let's say like 60 of your 100 cards in your deck are crossover cards, that means every time you draw them, they'll fulfill multiple roles. So the value you can garner there is phenomenal. So just having 13 of them in this deck is so helpful to help keep the deck flowing properly. So now for the first category, which is like Block Me. It's the card that's going to force your opponents to block Chromium so you can kill all their creatures with them. So Nemesis Mask is what this deck is built around, like I've said a couple times already, but this card is so cool. When I first saw Chromium and then I saw what Rampage does, because I couldn't remember because I just don't play cards with it, I was like, I wonder if I can get a bunch of blockers. And there are some creatures that just force blocks just innately. There's an Eldrazi that makes all of your opponent's creatures able to block, do so. There's a couple other cards. I think Tromokratis might say, in order to block this creature, you have to block with all of your creatures. So there are already some cards that do that, but the only card I could find that puts this on like an equipment or an enchantment that fits these colors is Nemesis Mask. And so when I saw Rampage, Chromium's ability, I'm like, I have to find a way to be able to block him. So I was like, yeah, let's use Nemesis Mask. This seems awesome. And I thought that Nemesis Mask, like just having that one ability, like yes, I put tutors in the deck to be able to get it, but I thought maybe having some more effects like that would be nice to have. So that's why I put Vorpal Sword and Quietus Spike in the deck. I have no idea how to pronounce that card. I think it's Quietus Spike. Anyways, Vorpal Sword makes it so that if you pay the 8 mana, the player that you deal combat damage to loses, which is crazy, and then Quietus Spike will take half of their life total. So yeah, all these cards kind of force blocks out of your opponents in one way or another, and I really like pairing this with Rampage. Chromium also has flying, so when you're trying to force people to block it, that doesn't really work if it has flying and your opponent's creatures, say like, so they're playing a Krenko deck and they make a ton of 1/1s and they're all on the ground. They can't block because Chromium is flying, so I thought of a way to deal with that. We can just take away Chromium's flying. Yeah, so these 3 cards all just take flying away, plus they might have an additional benefit. Colossus Hammer and Mage Bay Armor, they're equipment that also buff its damage and its toughness, while Mystic Decree is an enchantment, so it just sits on the board and makes everybody lose flying, which is awesome. And yeah, so I just like thought that this would be really funny. You throw a Colossus Hammer plus Trample plus Nemesis Mask on your Chromium, and then you swing at somebody, and now they have to block with all their creatures, making Chromium way bigger and just dealing a ton of damage. I thought this was hilarious, and I thought, like, just Colossus Hammer is already a hilarious card, making creatures lose flying. So yeah, I'm really happy with how this card will work with Rampage and Fly, and Nemesis Mask now will all kind of work together. And like I said, Trample. So Trample works well with Rampage, because if they try to block it, you just get bigger, so you can just trample over for more. So that's why I thought of having Trample in here, so that you can really get through and punch hard. So Naginata, Brawler's Plate, and Lockstone Warhammer, all of these just give a buff to your damage or your power, and then they also give you Trample. They're all just good cards. Naginata is great because of how cheap it is, only being a 1-cost equipment and then only having equip 2, which is fantastic. And then Lockstone Warhammer also giving you lifelink, so all the Rampage buff you're going to get until the end of turn, and then turning around and being able to use that to gain you life back is awesome. So I love all 3 of these cards, and they're all so strong. But even better than that is also giving bonus abilities. So all of these cards here give something in addition to the Trample. Like Sword of Vengeance and Haunted Cloak both also give Vigilance and Haste. Chariot of Victory gives First Strike Haste. Hero's Heirloom also gives Haste. And Cauldron Complete gives +5/+5, Indestructible, First Strike, Trample, Haste. It's like keyword soup. And if it, like, Cauldron Complete is already an awesome card, being a 7-mana 5/5 with just all that nonsense on it. But when you throw it onto Chromium and then start swinging, oh, it does so much damage, and the card's awesome. Cauldron Complete, so good. And yeah, I love how I also give it Livid Weapon. That is hilarious. So the next category is Haste, and you're probably going to recognize the 5 cards I just showed because they also give Haste, but there's 3 more cards in the Haste category that I'm going to go over here quickly. So yeah, these cards all give Haste, which is crazy, but these cards also give Haste, which is super nice. And Assault Suit is super interesting card. I'll probably go over it a little bit better later, but the fact that it also gives a power toughness bump is great, and it also makes it so it can't be sacrificed. It's super awesome, and I'm going to get deeper into this card later when I talk about the protection category. So with all this equipment running around in your deck, you're going to need to be able to equip it. The problem is Chromium already costs 8 mana, and then during your upkeep you have to pay 3 to keep them around. So with all of those upkeep costs and the cost of your commander alone, plus all the other stuff you're going to be doing, I thought that having a package of stuff that makes equipping just your equipment onto Chromium easier would be super helpful. And yeah, so here's what those cards are now. So these are probably the 2 best equip shenanigans cards in the decks. Pure Steel Paladin is probably also one of the best cards in the deck, just because whenever equipment enters, draw a card, which is wild, and then your equipment get equip 0 as long as you have 3 or more artifacts. That's also insane. Yeah, Pure Steel Paladin, I forgot this card existed, and I don't play a lot of equipment decks just normally. I don't really have any equipment decks in my collection. Might change that soon. But yeah, Pure Steel Paladin, holy crap, this card is bonkers. And then Ardennes, super interesting. At the beginning of combat, you just grab some duct tape and slap all your auras and equipment onto one target, permanent or player. That's kind of wild, and it's like Pure Steel Paladin, just like a free equip all at the same time. I really like Ardennes and Pure Steel Paladin here, especially when you have some of the other stuff that has a higher equip cost, like Brawler's Plate having equip 4, which is really expensive. So yeah, these cards are fantastic here. And then in addition to that, these are all the one-time per turn equip cost cards. So yeah, Brass Squire and Auriok Windwalker, you can just tap them to and attach an equipment, which is great. Forge Anew can recur something from your graveyard, also great, and lets the first equip cost in a turn be 0, and lets you do it at instant speed. Lets you equip stuff at instant speed during your turn, which is also pretty cool. And then Armored Skyhunter is interesting because it lets you look at the top 6 cards, and then you pick an order of equipment, slap it onto the battlefield, and then attach it to a creature you control. Like, that's crazy. Like, the amount of... If you get a Cauldron with that, that's 7 mana to put it onto the board, and I think it has an equip cost of like 5 or 7 as well. So Armored Skyhunter, you pay 4 mana and you get like 12 to 14 mana worth of value. That's crazy. And then even stronger than that is Stonehewer Giant, where every turn you pay 2 and tap it, and you put an equipment card from your deck onto the battlefield equipped to one of your creatures, which is also bonkers. Stonehewer Giant can go and grab your Nemesis Mask, and then it can grab you a Cauldron Complete or a Colossus Hammer. Like, Stonehewer Giant here is crazy. Next to Pure Steel Paladin, this is probably the second best, or it might be stronger than Pure Steel Paladin. Like, those 2 cards are ridiculously powerful in this deck, and I just love Stonehewer Giant. I want to find a deck where I can use Stonehewer Giant even more in. I'll probably like a personal deck for myself. But yeah, such an amazing and phenomenal card. Now for the recursion category, because Nemesis Mask is going to be forcing your opponents to block with all their creatures, or Vorpal Weapon is going to kill them, or Quetzal Spike is going to take away half their life, or, you know, you have like Lockstone Warhammer gaining you life, and just all this stuff, you're going to want to be able to recur them, because people are going to want to remove them, or if like they get caught up in a board wipe or something. So these are the recursion cards I decided to put in the deck. Sun Titan, one of my favorite cards in all of Magic. It's just the amount of value it accrues you over a game. It can get you back anything with mana value 3 or less. It's a permanent, so it can get you back like land, which is what's super useful. Say you're running a ton of fetch lands, or like Evolving Wild, Fabled Passage, Myriad Landscape, stuff like that. When he enters and then attacks, you get to pull 2 of those back from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is awesome. I love Sun Titan for like white ramping, which is super awesome. And then Emery is super cool because once a turn you get to tap it, and then you get to cast artifact from your graveyard, which is super awesome. Like, it's super helpful for when all of your stuff gets removed, or like for when Emery's like the commander in a deck. You can do tons of shenanigans with like 0 cost artifacts and a bunch of other stuff on tapping her and so on. And then her also costing 2 less for each artifact you control. You can get this out for 1 mana, mills you 4 cards, getting your artifacts in your graveyard. Yeah, Emery here is crazy. And then you already saw Forge Anew, which this card is awesome. This card's so cool. And then yeah, like this package right here is awesome. I love all these cards. And just, sometimes I think about cutting Sun Titan, then I remember all the shenanigans you can pull with them. So yeah, it's hard. I find it really hard to cut Sun Titan in like a mono white deck or even a 2-color deck. Now for the protection category. You've already seen some of these cards, but some of these cards are going to be new, and plus I'll get into why I think Assault Suit's crazy later on in this category. So these are the 1-mana protection spells in the deck, and when I was going through, there was a lot of 1-mana protection spells I could have picked. Some of them like let you counter a spell that targets a permanent you control, and some do other things, but these were the ones that I really honed in on because they give hexproof and indestructible, while also being able to target an artifact creature for Blacksmith skill, and then an artifact for Loren's Escape. So Loren's Escape is probably like the strongest protection spell in here because you can target Chromium with it to protect it, or your Nemesis Mask, and that's just awesome. And then yeah, Blacksmith skill also protecting is really cool and really great, and also giving your artifact creature a bump, which is kind of neat. But yeah, these cards are awesome and really important to protect your commander and your important pieces. And these cards also, more protection you've already seen. Lightning Greaves with Boots, Shroud and Hexproof, phenomenal. They're commander staples. Everyone knows them, everyone loves them. Cauldron Complete, yeah. 7 mana to equip and 7 mana to cast is super steep. But like I showed with some cards earlier, it's easy to get out onto the battlefield and then cheat the equip cost, and it giving indestructible as the protection along with all the other keyword soup it has, plus the power toughness bump. Such an amazing card. Now I'm going to go into why I love Assault Suit. So back when I first started playing Magic for the second time, I played when I was in like grade 6. When I was like 12 years old, I got some pre-constructed decks. I got a Lorwyn Black-Red Goblin pre-constructed deck, Bogart something. And then I got the Time Spiral Blue-Red Suspend pre-constructed deck. Those decks were really fun. I played with them a lot. But when I finally got back into Magic, back in I think 2017, person I played with had a Zurgo Helm Smasher deck, and Zurgo says he must attack each turn of Fable, and during the turn you control, if it's your turn, he has Indestructible. So the way my friend would run this deck is he'd have to put Assault Suit on him, and then he would pass Zurgo around the deck and everyone would smack each other with him. And I thought that was super cool, and I thought Assault Suit was awesome. I've always looking to put in other decks, but just never really worked. And then when I was going through making the Arcady Sabbath deck, I was looking up ways to stop the cards from being sacrificed. And then I found Assault Suit. And I don't think I gave it enough credit in that deck, because stopping it from being sacrificed is crazy. It negates the upkeep cost, but also stops edict effects and some like sacrifice board wipes that are going around. Plus, it also gives a damage bonus, toughness bonus, and haste. And you can politic with it. You can get your opponents to attack each other with it. So say like, alright, I get it all together and it's like, look, me and you, out of the 4 people here, we're the lowest here. So what if I attack him, wipe his board of his creatures, and then when it goes to your turn, I'll give you Chromium so you can attack that guy, wipe his board. So like, it gives you a lot of bargaining power with like the weakest player at the table, and they can't just like attack you with it and like, no, screw the deal, attack you with it, because it can't attack you. So yeah, Assault Suit is a phenomenal card, and I want to put it in more decks because it's so cool and just such a unique and interesting card. And I always remember that Zurgo deck and Assault Suit getting slapped on it and passed around. It's hilarious. Now for the Tutors. Now, I never run Tutors in any of my decks, like I've said before, because I hate how consistent they make the deck, because I like the randomness of Magic, like the drawing cards and just trying to solve the puzzle with what you got. So for that reason, I'm not really a huge fan of Tutors, but with Nemesis Mask being the keystone of the deck, I need to have a way to tutor it out. So that's why I put 6 Tutors in, all of which can find Nemesis Mask. So these are the 3 blue Tutors in the deck, and the interesting about these cards is they can just find artifacts. They don't need to find like equipment or something. So say you already have Nemesis Mask or something, these can help you find a different piece to hopefully help you string together a win, or find some other equipment or something to help you get along. Fabricate, just 3 mana, let you get it. Trophy Mage, being a creature that can only find a 3 mana value artifact, is kind of interesting, but hey, just another tutor for Nemesis Mask. And then Word of Invention is probably the most interesting, because for 6 mana, you get Nemesis Mask put onto the battlefield. And like for 4 mana, you go get a Colossus Hammer and put onto the battlefield. So Word of Invention having that X cost, and also having Improvise, so all of your equipment that are out already can help pay for it, make it like super efficient and super awesome. And yeah, these cards are like just fantastic. And then these are the white Tutors that will help you go find your Nemesis Mask, but these only find equipment. So Seal Shapers, Nope the Armory, just bang, done, get the equipment put into your hand. And like I said earlier, Stonehewer Giant, getting it out of your library onto the battlefield and equipping for 2 mana a turn is crazy. And if you have 7 mana and like a Lightning Greaves out, you pop him down, throw the Greaves on him, and then go activate him and go get whatever, like your Cauldron complete or something. Yeah, Stonehewer Giant is phenomenal. This card is so good. Love this card. Now for the draw category. The draw category is a little low. It's only 8. That's because I'm running 6 Tutors. So I kind of figured that like I wouldn't need as many draw spells because I'm running 6 Tutors, because I really am just looking for the Nemesis Mask. And so yeah, that's why it's so low, but I like all the draw cards in this deck, and I think they're all very strong with the interplay between all the cards in this deck. So these are all the equipment-based draw stuff: Mask, Infiltration Lens, and Robe, all being equipment that draw cards. Mask is when you deal combat damage to a player. Infiltration Lens is when it's blocked, you draw cards, so more of that rampage, block, trample shenanigans going on. Robe with Arch Magi, whenever you deal damage, combat damage to a player, you draw that many cards. So 10 damage, 10 cards. Robe is crazy. It's so strong, like holy crap. And then, like I said earlier, Armored Skyhunter and Pure Steel Paladin. 2 great cards, cheating equip cost and drawing you cards. Both those cards are awesome. And these are the Artifact Synergy draw cards in the deck. Vidalcan Archmage and Shimmer Dragon being crazy card draw engines. Shimmer Dragon, the really cool thing about that card is when your equipment is attached to a creature, when you attack, what a lot of people do is they just tap the whole stack of cards when they go to attack. But really what happens is the only thing that gets tapped is the creature, and all of your artifacts stay untapped. So when you attack and whatever, you can then use Shimmer Dragon to tap all of your equipment to then go draw cards, because that doesn't do anything to the equipment. So yeah, Shimmer Dragon, phenomenal here. And then Thoughtcast, if you have 4 artifacts out, this is 1 mana, draw 2 cards, just super great value. Such a phenomenal card. So yeah, all these cards are absolutely amazing in any artifact deck, and they work so well here too. So the ramp is interesting. It's pretty low to the ground. I'm not running any huge ramp stuff because I wanted it all to, like, when you play the ramp spell, you can use it in that turn to get more ramp out, cast your draw spells and whatnot. So it is very low to the ground, not running like a Gilded Lotus or a Thran Dynamo, nothing like that. All of it's super efficient, and most of it produces colored mana so that you can also help pay for Chromium's upkeep cost if you need to. Also, Chromium does have a very color heavy cost just to cast the card, so I wanted to be able to help with that as well. So the only 2 colorless producers in the deck are Soul Ring and War Power Stone. I just find it hilarious, the power difference between these 2 cards. How Worn Power Stone costs 2 more than Soul Ring, but it also enters tapped. Like, it's hilarious, the power difference between these cards. Actually ridiculous. And then these are the 2 artifacts that can like make any color, because Wayfarer's Bauble goes find you any basic, and then Arcane Singer can just tap for any color. These are the rest of the mana artifacts for this deck. They are all just tap for 2 of the 3 colors. The signets are great because you can filter the colorless through them, or say you didn't need a white, or you had like an extra blue laying around you didn't need. You can then filter it through for other colors if you need it. And then the talismans producing colorless, so you can help cast all your artifacts. And then they produce a colored, but dealing damage to you when you do need the colored mana from them. So yeah, all these cards are also super useful here. So the removal here is very important, and it's very creature based, because this deck will fall apart if your opponent has like a massive creature, big power, big toughness, or another creature that has Death Touch. So because of that, you're going to want to be able to remove the key creatures that's going to stop you from doing your board wipe combat strategy. So that's why there's 10 removal, and here's what they are. So these are all the 1 mana ones: Swords, Path, Pongify, Rapid Hybridization. Any blue or white deck, I try to run all of these in, so strong. Dispatch, which I didn't know about till building this deck, is phenomenal, because like, you're going to have 3 or more artifacts in this deck at any given time because of how many artifacts and all the tutors and stuff. So yeah, Dispatch, crazy here, being Swords or a Path to Exile without having the negative or the upside for your opponent. And then the issue with Pongify Rapid Hybridization here is that it does make a 3/3, which kind of gets around the Rampage, because even if like they block with a 6/6 and then the 3/3, like it is 1 bigger than the Rampage stack, and you would get to 9, they would get to 9, you just trade. That's not good. But being 1 mana instants that destroy a creature, super important to run here, because you'd rather it be a 3/3 than a 1/1 with Death Touch. And then the other 5 pieces of removal, Damn, just hitting a creature, awesome. Voidrend and Vindicate, hitting a permanent, it's crazy. Voidrend is non-land, but doesn't matter, these cards are both nuts. Stroke of Midnight probably being the best removal spell in the deck, because it creates a 1/1, so it gets you another stack of Rampage when you're attacking, which is phenomenal. And then Dismantling Wave being a 3-for-1 as just removal for 3 mana. This card's bonkers. It's super cheap. Everyone should be running it in all of their white decks. It is some of the best removal, because it says up to. Something like Decimate, I think that's what that card's called, requires you to have each of the individual targets, and if any of them go away, the spell fizzles. But since this says up to, you can target all, like, 1 for each of your opponents, and then even if they like sack it or find a way to get rid of it, it doesn't matter, because it's up to, so it won't fizzle. Dismantling Wave, probably one of my favorite removal spells in Commander. Now for the board wipes. These board wipes are very important, because if your opponents get too many creatures that are way too big, so the Rampage won't really do much, or they just have so much crap that like they may be able to find a tap it, so that when you go to attack them, they don't have to block. Like, there's a lot of reasons why you need board wipes to help stabilize the board and get you back into it, and these ones are very good and very efficient for what you're trying to do. So, Divine Reckoning and Single Combat, they both leave 1 creature alive on everybody's board. That's might seem bad, because it probably won't get commanders. If everyone has their commanders out it'll leave all of them alive but kill everything else. But that is very important because you get to keep your commander, which costs 8 mana. And there's a high likelihood that you have the most expensive commander at the game if your commander costs 8 mana. And so yeah, so them costing 4 and 5 mana is super great rate for this. Divine Reckoning also having flashback, so you can do it again later. And then you're going to probably want to use Dam as a removal spell most of the time. But there are going to be those cases where you're going to need to overload it to wipe the board. And you're probably going to want to do that before you get Chromium out or after Chromium dies. So yeah, all these cards are super awesome. And Dam is probably one of the best spells in Black-White for casual commander. Because holy crap, it being removal and a board wipe for such an efficient rate is crazy. Now for the lands. So I'm not going to go through all 38 lands in the deck, but I'm just going to go through the key categories and some of the key lands I put in this deck that I thought were really good choices. So Fabled Passage represents all the fetch lands I have in the deck, like Evolving Wilds and Myriad Landscape. Azorius Chancery is all the represents all the bounce lands, including like Orzhov Basilica, Dimir Aqueduct or whatever it is, and then Guildless Commons. Morphic Pool, I'm going to say this in every episode where I have a commander that has 2 or more colors, but Wizards, put all of the Battle Bond lands in the Commander Precons. The Battle Bond lands are designed for multiplayer formats, which they were designed for Two-Headed Giant, but like they're also basically designed. They are designed for Commander in the same vein. So just put them in the Commander Precons. Like, holy crap, it's so annoying not having these in there because they're designed to be put in there. Anyways, and then I'm also running the suite of artifact lands. So I'm running all of the tapped dual indestructible artifact lands from, I think they were from Modern Horizons or something, Modern Horizons 2 maybe, Darksteel Citadel, and then the 3 untapped monocolored artifact lands. I forget the name of the white and the black one, but I'm running all those as well. And then Buried Ruin probably being one of the strongest lands in the deck because it's a land that can recur one of your artifacts from your graveyard back to your hand and only costs 3 mana because it's 2 to tap it plus you're tapping Buried Ruin. So yeah, I really like the land base I built for this deck, and Buried Ruin is such a good just get a land back get an artifact back from your graveyard when you need it. Now for the maybes. I had too many maybe cards when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, so I actually have 10 cards in the maybe category because I couldn't cut it down to just 5. So Rite of Consumption is super interesting here, where as an additional cost to cast it, you can sacrifice a creature, and then it deals damage equal to that creature's power to target player, and then you gain life equal to the damage dealt that way. So after you get a crap load of Rampage or whatever, and then you could play this, and then there you could potentially kill somebody just outright with it, which is just absolutely nuts. The problem I have with it is you can't tutor it, and if I wanted to do that, I would want the deck to be more consistent. I wouldn't want this just one-off, I just happen to have Rite of Consumption, take someone out of the game, because that's kind of lame, and it'd be a feel bad to just it wouldn't be early on, because Chromium does cost 8 mana, but just being like, alright, I wiped this person's board, and then this person's dead. It's like, feels bad. It also sacrifices the creature, and you're already spending all that effort to get him onto the board, equip him up like Voltron, and then swing for the fences. So I had a hard time cutting it, and I can really see it being put in the deck, but it's probably, out of all 10 cards in the maybe board category, it's the closest to being put in. Generous Gift was taken out because it puts a 3/3 token into play, which you want the creatures your opponents to have, if you're going to give them tokens, be 1/1s or 2/2s, so that when they add to the Rampage, it isn't getting bigger. When they add to the blockers, it isn't being bigger than what the Rampage is giving. Tezzeret, I ended up cutting him because he's not good enough as an Equip Shenanigans card, because it's the first equip cost. It would be the first equip cost you do on a turn, but it only is 2 less. It wouldn't make it 0, so something that has an equip cost of like 4 only drops it down to 2, and I don't think that's good enough. Also, his draw then discard I think is phenomenal, and it would be so helpful. You could just mill through your deck quickly, but I'm not running enough Recursion that I think that you want to be putting the cards in the bin as much. So yeah, that's why I cut it. I could have been running more Recursion, but I'd be stretching the deck even thinner, and I don't think that that's necessary. And then Sigarda's Aid isn't in the deck because your equipment is going to be out before Chromium hits. It's not a thing where you put Chromium out and then you cast all of your equipment. It's going to be out before you cast Chromium because he's so expensive. So yeah, Sigarda's Aid's not going to help you with that. And then Stoneforge Mystic is too expensive. I want to run in the deck, but it's over $20, at least when I checked. And that's just, I think it was like $20 plus dollars. And it's just, you can do the same thing with Stonehewer Giant, or you can with the bird or whatever that looks at the top 6 cards. Like, and Stoneforge, so Stoneforge Mystic, while being an absolutely phenomenal card, it's too expensive, and you can do similar stuff to it without needing to drop all that money on that card. And then the last cards in the maybe category are the Cauldra set, Shadow Spear, and Eon Hub. So the Cauldra set I really wanted to put in because the helmet gives you Trample and Haste, which that's 2 of the categories. And the shield gives you Indestructible, which is another one of the categories. And then the sword gives you like big power toughness boost, and it also makes it so when your opponent deals damage to a creature, it gets exiled. And all these cards are really awesome, and they all work really well together. But the problem is, like, there are just other cards that do more than these that I could put in, and while I really want to put these in, these cards are so close to going in. It's just that I had so many cards that fit multiple roles at the same time that these just didn't quite make the cut, although I really wish I could have fit them in the deck, but I feel like they're just not quite there, unfortunately. And then Shadow Spear, again, just an expensive card. It's 1 mana, equip 2, Trample Lifelink, +1/+1. That is ridiculous. It's the value you get out of this card for how cheap it is, also being able to pay 1 to make your opponent's permanents lose hexproof and indestructible. If you're going into combat, your opponent's blocking with like an Impervious Great Worm or something, and like 15 1/1s. Right, you can just pay the 1. It removes the indestructible from that guy, and then now your Chromium is going to be able to be bigger than it, block damage, all that stuff. So like, yeah, unfortunately, Shadow Spear is just too expensive, and it's a phenomenal card. It really is. It's just, I didn't feel like if I was going to put this deck together, I wouldn't want to drop that kind of money on it. And then finally, probably the spiciest card in the maybe board category is Eon Hub. It's too expensive for what it does. What it does is awesome, removing upkeep steps. Like, everyone doesn't get an upkeep step, which just neuters so many decks. And cards that have upkeep stuff, like, makes Rhystic Remora just stick around forever, which is stupid. It cumulative upkeep, any cards with a cumulative upkeep cost, it gets rid of them. Like, they don't, as in like that you don't have to pay it, so that you can just keep those around. Like, Eon Hub is ridiculous. It's so cool, and I'm going to find a deck I can put it in, but unfortunately this just isn't the deck because it's a 5 mana do nothing at the end of the day, and that's just not worth it because you're spending 5 mana to not spend 3 mana later, or 5 mana to not spend 6 mana later over the course of 2 turns. And I'd rather just have Assault Suit out rather than Eon Hub at that point. So yeah, that's why it didn't make the deck, but again, this card is so spicy. So yeah, let me know what you think about the deck. This is probably the most outlandish deck I've made out of all of them so far. I think Adden might have been the most synergistic of all the decks I've made, and that's the first one, which is hilarious, but he was the commander with the most going on. But yeah, I think this is probably the craziest deck I've built so far in the series. And yeah, please let me know what you think. What cards would you add? What cards would you take out? Would you have put in Rite of Consumption in the Cauldra cycle, or would have you also maybe boarded those? I'm curious about if you've built a Chromium deck, what changes what cards do you put in yours, or do you just have like an Elder Dragon deck where you run all of these like old Legends Elder Dragons in them? I'd love to talk to you guys down in the comments after this video goes live, so yeah, let me know what you thought. So these are all my socials. I'm trying to live stream on Twitch Monday through Thursday from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock Atlantic time. Twitter is when I post when I'm going live on Twitch and when these videos go up. I still haven't figured out what I'm going to be doing on TikTok. I really haven't had the time to really sit down and try to create content for it, but if you have any ideas, I'm all ears. I have an account on Reddit for Manasplained. I don't really post there a lot, but I might start posting there once I get bigger. Maybe more people will notice me, and then I'll be able to draw in more of an audience, because I'm really enjoying doing this, and I really enjoy talking with people down in the comments about it. and I'm seeing a lot of positive feedback, which I really like. And then Architect and Moxfield is where I post all of these deck lists. So yeah, please check out all my socials. Greatly appreciate it. Really appreciate help growing the channel. And as always, thanks for watching, and get building splainers. Alright, that is so